As a country, we've had a period as a colony, and we didn't like it, so we decided to bust away from Great Britain. And more recently, the last president before the great president, Donald Trump, thought that America was still a colonizer and an evil colonial power. But now, I understand from my friend Mike Gonzalez at Heritage, the author of The Plot to Change America, How Identity Politics is Dividing the Land of the Free, his theory is that America has been colonized one more time, except it's an identity kind of colonization. Mike, welcome back to the program, and tell me this, how has the left colonialized Americans?
Well, hey, Lars, it's great to be back on your show. Well, you've heard the expression, I'm sure your listeners have, the long march through the institutions, and this has to do with the takeover of the culture-making institutions of the media, the entertainment industry, and the academy by really not just liberals but far off left ideologues. And even though they represent a very small percentage of the country, the Hidden Tribes Project put the woke at around 8% of the country, less than 10% definitely. They're very influential because they get to control the language, they get to control the concepts. So we have now accepted concepts and ideas and words or terms that have been twisted by the left, and we spout them all the time, we repeat them without really understanding what we're doing. And it has to do with the fact that the other side has taken over. The left, the very far left, has taken over the academy, for example, in the media, and express these ideas, and we just repeat them, not really mindlessly, not knowing what we're doing.
And people might, I understand, that Lenin talked about controlling not the vote, but who counted the vote. But in this case, if they can control the language, they have the ability to steer the country in a particular direction by telling us how we get a chance to talk about various subjects.
Well, we use their language. I'm talking even words like nobody questions today, like the term Hispanic or the term Asian American, which are really, pan-ethnic, artificial, synthetic groupings that were created by at the insistence of the left by the Office of Management and Budget in the late 70s, or the idea of diversity, which is beautiful when it obtains organically because of meritocracy, and that's exactly the America you and I want to live in. But it is coercive when it's mandated through quotas. Or the idea of, all these concepts, right? We repeat them. And then at the other extreme, there are words and things that we cannot say or we face cancellation. Our livelihoods will be gone because somebody will say, well, you hurt my feelings by saying that, and we're no longer able to say it.
Well, for example, I remember a long time ago a term I never even hear anymore, and that is reverse discrimination. And we were told, no, there is no such thing as reverse discrimination. Discrimination may only be against people of color, and people who are part of the majority population cannot experience discrimination, to which an awful lot of us have said, well, I've been turned down for a job because I wasn't the right skin color. Isn't that discrimination? And they say, no, you're part of the majority group. You're not even allowed to say that you are the subject of discrimination. So in other words, certain kinds of concepts only augur to the favor of one group and not to another, which strikes me as a violation of the basic idea of the Constitution, which is we're all equal under the law.
Well, that's right. I don't use the term reverse discrimination. Discrimination is discrimination.
Yeah,
it's when somebody is kept out of an opportunity because he is or she is the wrong color or she is the wrong sex, and it is equally bad and equally violates the Constitution and the Reconstruction Amendments. So when you add the adjective the reverse, it really is unnecessary. Discrimination is discrimination, just like murder is murder, robbery is a robbery. It doesn't matter what the intent was. If you murder somebody, you go to prison. You go to prison for a very long time.
And I agree with you on that, which is why I've always told my audience I reject the idea of hate crimes, because it says that somehow if somebody hits a person over the head with a brick to steal their wallet, it's a crime, but it's worse depending on the motivation of the robber. robber. No, it's an assault. It may be a murder. It may be a robbery, but it's a robbery, and it's the same no matter which person you rob. Strong and powerful or weak and disadvantaged, it doesn't matter. It's the same crime, and yet we're told in the language that we have to describe it differently.
Right. Well, both acts leave children without their father or their mother. Affect a lot of people. So it's the same way with discrimination. It violates the 14th Amendment, which guarantees equal protection under the law. It violates all sorts of things, and that is exactly what I mean by when I say the woke have colonized us, have come to dominate us. Now, if you have studied colonization, you know that it was often implemented by a minority of people, right? I mean, a handful of people, a handful of Englishmen ruled millions and millions in India. So I kind of, not jokingly, but I kind of applied this concept to the idea that 8% of the woke are dictating to the rest of America what the things they say, the things they cannot say.
Now, I'm talking to Mike Gonzalez from Heritage, who's the author of The Plot to Change America. So, Mike, how do we fight back against it since they control those institutions like the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, the folks who hand out the Oscars? If they control all of this and they decide what we see and what is said, either whether it's in entertainment media or news media, if they control all of that, how do you ever fight back against it?
Well, that's the thing, is that when the mainstream, it just moves so far to the left that it is no longer in touch with reality and truth, then things like 2020 happen, right? Where you had so many people in Florida and in the Rio Grande Valley voting for Trump, or you had Chinese Americans organizing opposition to the racial preferences of affirmative action in winning by 12 points. So in this year, where the media kept repeating the year of racial reckoning, the year is, we had at the polls what surprised all of the elite. Heads exploded at the New York Times that things went the way they did. So that's what happens when the rhetoric of the mainstream becomes so detached from realities on the ground. Then reality you have a reality check that comes back and bites the elites in a certain part of their anatomy.
Well, I mean, for example, Mike, even the ability, not necessarily in words, but in not reporting certain things and reporting other things. Donald Trump is a racist. That's been repeated over and over and over again for the last 5 years by the mainstream media. And then Donald Trump, having been, on the public stage big time during the 4 years of his presidency, shows up at an election, and what happens? He gets a record, a stunning record, a modern record of black votes and Hispanic votes from voters who apparently are not controlled by the mainstream, by the the entertainment media, the news media, and the news media simply decides to ignore that and say, we've been calling this guy a racist, so it wouldn't make any sense to tell you he got a record number of Latino and black votes, so we just will leave that out. Whereas they would have made a big deal of it, say, if it had happened during Obama.
Well, some of the smarter ones are beginning now to understand how much egg they have on their face, right? Even Matt Iglesias of Vox wrote a piece, which was comical in its own way, because he says, hey, maybe these Mexican-American voters, I don't use the term Latino voters because there's no Latino vote, because maybe these Mexican-American voters in the Rio Grande Valley do not see what Trump says in the same light that we college-educated elites see it. He actually had he was struck by the blindingly obvious. But I think that is a step in the right direction, right? You have to start with baby steps.
And that's the direction we should go. That's Mike Gonzalez from Heritage. His book is called The Plot to Change America, How Identity Politics is Dividing the Land of the Free. Mike, thanks so much for the time.